Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome from the Community of Sant'Egidio headquarters in Rome to this online press conference. I thank you, first of all the journalists that confirmed their participation to this webinar. Today, with my very distinguished co-panelists, we are going to tell you a story of solidarity and cooperation. This story sees the United States Agency for International Development, the Community of Sant'Egidio, and the International Union of Superiors General working together to face the terrible effects of the pandemic in Italy. I wish to thank the ambassador of the United States to the Holy See, Callista Gingrich, and the executive director of UISG, Sister Patricia Murray, for joining us today. But before we go on in this webinar, we would love to show you a short video on the efforts made so far to assist the most vulnerable of our society. Thank you.
Io credo che in questo momento difficile in cui ci rendiamo conto delle difficoltà che attraversano la nostra città, delle tante persone che sono costrette a vivere in solitudine, abbiamo rinforzato il sostegno a queste persone la sera, distribuendo i pasti e aumentando il servizio mensa.
Sono a Milano, come potete ben vedere. Faccio il cuoco, il mio lavoro è la mia passione. Poter mettere a disposizione il mio lavoro per fare qualcosa è una cosa che avrei sempre sperato e sognato. Mi ha anche aperto gli occhi su quello che molto spesso non riuscivo mai a vedere.
Anche in piena emergenza molti ragazzi sono usciti con noi per le strade a distribuire pasti senza fissa dimora, a distribuire spese alle famiglie in difficoltà nei vari quartieri di Napoli, soprattutto in quelli più difficili. Quindi è anche un'occasione per dire grazie a tutti perché insieme ce l'abbiamo fatta, ma soprattutto perché questo ci insegna che soltanto insieme ce la possiamo ancora fare.
Thank you for those who made the video that shed a light on the various and diffuse activities of all the volunteers all over Italy. It is my pleasure now to introduce our next guest, Ambassador Callista Gingrich. I'm welcoming you as the United States Ambassador to the Holy See, but also as a dear friend of the Community of Sant'Egidio. You always followed with great attention and care all our activities, so you are more than welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Mauro. Good morning. I'd like to thank you and the Community of Sant'Egidio for the opportunity to be with you today. The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically changed our world. In Italy, the coronavirus has infected more than 1.6 million people and has claimed over 50,000 lives. The United States and Italy enjoy a strong and friendly relationship, enriched by our shared history, values, and culture. As part of our enduring friendship, the United States, through the generosity of the American people and the United States Agency for International Development, is honored to award a $900,000 grant to the Community of Sant'Egidio and its collaborator, the International Union of Superiors General, to provide critical humanitarian assistance to those most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic in Italy. Through this project, which began in July, Sant'Egidio and UISG have provided essential items such as food, clothing, and personal protection equipment to the homeless, the elderly, and other at-risk people. They have also provided counseling services and virtual medical assessments. Sant'Egidio and UISG are two of the finest examples of faith-based organizations that serve some of the most vulnerable populations around the world. Faith-based organizations are defined by an abiding sense of purpose and are dedicated to aiding those most in need. They serve as lifelines for communities experiencing unprecedented hardships and as advocates for the oppressed. The U.S. Embassy to the Holy See and the community of Sant'Egidio have enjoyed a long and productive relationship. Together, we have mediated conflicts, advanced interfaith dialogue, and provided humanitarian assistance to those most in need. Sant'Egidio is recognized around the world for its efforts to resolve conflict, promote peace, and alleviate poverty through its vast international network. As Secretary Mike Pompeo said during his visit to Rome on October 1st, Sant'Egidio's work is noble because it reaches where politics cannot reach and achieves what politics cannot achieve. UISG is also a cherished partner of the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See. Over the years, we have worked with Sister Pat Murray and her dedicated staff to combat human trafficking, to promote interreligious dialogue, and to advance the courageous work of women religious. UISG is a unifying voice for 400,000 women religious who work tirelessly to defend human dignity around the world. I am delighted that UISG has partnered with Sant'Egidio to support religious communities and homeless shelters for those in urgent need of medical and hygienic products. I commend the community of Sant'Egidio and UISG for their life-saving efforts in Italy. Working together across governments, faith-based organizations, and civil society, we can and will overcome the spread of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador, for your kind words. I am very grateful for your help. I want also to stress that after this, the intervention of the panelists, there will be a section of question and answer. And myself and Sister Patricia Murray, we will be very grateful to answer to all the questions of your that you will write on the chat. Now it's my honor to introduce Sister Patricia Murray, who was already introduced in a nice way by Ambassador Gingrich, who is the Executive Director of the International Union of Superiors General, which is a global umbrella organization for 80% of all women religious orders, and headquarters are in Rome. Sister Pat, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mauro. I want to begin by thanking Ambassador Gingrich for this initiative and for many other ways in which she has supported the work of the International Union of Superiors General. In this particular case, she reached out to the US Agency for International Development to see what support could be given for the enormous needs here in Italy. And then she facilitated the collaboration between Sant'Egidio and the UISG for this particular initiative. We at UISG have had other collaborative initiatives with Sant'Egidio in the past, but during this COVID time, reaching out together to meet the needs of those who are poor and vulnerable is even more essential than ever. And I've been very pleased to work with Mauro Garofalo during these months and to promote this initiative. In a way, the opportunity to reach out to religious communities during this time, especially in relation to care and support for elderly sisters, is part of a change of epochs which we're facing. In the past, when we read about pandemics, especially, for example, during the time of the Spanish flu, the sisters were very visible and very present on the streets, in the homes and in the hospitals. Very early on during this pandemic, we received a letter at UISG from a medical doctor here in Italy who asked, "Where are the sisters? We need your help." The sisters are still there, helping in the parishes and shelters and many different places of need. But however, another reality is that many of the sisters are today among those most vulnerable because of their age and frail health. And during this time of COVID, I'm sure you're all aware of the many deaths that occurred of elderly sisters, including also priests during this COVID time. So in a way, this is a time to reach out and support those thousands of sisters here in Italy who have been teachers and nurses and doctors and social workers and catechists and pastoral ministers, not only here in Italy, but as missionaries in many different parts of the world. Now, many of them are in care homes in their congregations, praying for the needs of the world and offering their sufferings for those who are fearful or worried or anxious at this time. In my role as Executive Secretary of the UISG, I've been very touched by the witness of these sisters whose lives have been utterly changed and who live with the same fears and anxieties as others. They draw on their faith in Christ, and they also draw on the goodness of others to help them during this difficult time. They're not living in some protected situation. They are living this current reality fully. Many elderly sisters have lived in isolation during this time, even within their religious communities, often separated from those who are in active ministry and who work outside the community and must self-isolate when they return home. This period of isolation has cut them off from members of their parish, their families and their friends, and they look to find new ways to connect like everybody else. Many religious communities are being cared for by a small number of sisters who are well enough to do so. You know, I've heard of some communities where everyone has tested positive for COVID, and then it falls to a small group of sisters who are well enough to care for the sick among them and to do the cooking and cleaning and all the household tasks associated with large institutions. Some communities have brought sisters from other parts of Europe or from Africa or from the Middle East to care for their elderly and frail members. But I want to emphasize that the communities of elderly sisters have expressed their great gratitude to those who continue to come to work among them because of their needs, despite the risk to their families. I'm so aware of sisters praying for the workers in their facilities, but also workers throughout Italy who are in the front line, praying for their protection. One sister said to me, "I pray to the Lord that he would take me rather than take someone with a young family." The USAID grant support has allowed Italian communities of sisters to purchase the cleaning materials and the protection materials that they require. And this is an act of solidarity and care, which is greatly appreciated. So we have been able to help over 42 communities and different entities, providing safety and protection and care. The majority of these are our elderly sisters, but they also include women who have been trafficked into Italy, women who have come as migrants and refugees with their young children, and who are looking for support and help to build a new life. In ending, I just want to quote the words of Pope Francis from his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, where he prayed to the Lord of creation. He said, "May our hearts be open to all people and nations of the earth. May we recognize the goodness and beauty that you have sown in each one of us, and thus forge bonds of unity, common projects, and shared dreams." This collaborative initiative between Sant'Egidio and the International Union of Superiors General, supported by the US government, is a shining example of goodness that can build a common project that recognizes the dignity of each person. Our sincere thanks from UISG for involving us in this initiative and allowing us to meet the needs of elderly sisters and vulnerable women at this time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Sister Pat, for so vividly depicting the situation and the efforts of your sister in assisting the most vulnerable. I do not want to add many things to what has been already said so far, but I want to stress that this cooperation between us, UISG, and USAID is very timely and significant. COVID-19 outbreak has struck hard the European societies and the Italian society in particular. I am talking, of course, of those who were already in difficulties, as was already said by Sister Pat, homeless, elderly alone, disabled, the last of the society. But I am also talking now about ordinary families that are in difficulty, owners of small and middle-sized enterprises who were forced and are forced every day to shut down. The numbers of the emergency in Italy are impressive. Our activities are carried on in different ways. You have heard and you have seen in the video some of these ways, but there are itinerant dinners, distribution of foods, food parcels, clothing, hygienic kits, for thousands of people in these 15 cities. There is an important activity in this project of home care for elderly and families in poverty through, again, distribution of food and kits. There is also a service which we think is very important of listening, counseling and orientation and health teleconsultation service, which is very useful for those who cannot or are in difficulty to reach the healthcare system. All these services are carried on in a spirit of solidarity and personal friendship to those we meet, as you have seen in the video. I think that to conclude this summary, that this project represents a bridge of solidarity across the Atlantic Ocean that allows the generosity of the American people, from the American people is the motto of USAID, to act in a country, Italy, our country, that has been particularly affected by this pandemic. And it is not a usual recipient of help because it's not a country in development. But to conclude my very brief illustration, I want to say that I'm particularly glad to USAID. And I think that this project, this help, is also a fruit of the memorandum of understanding that was signed a couple of years ago in Washington between Sant'Egidio and USAID. I'm also grateful for the friendship and the assistance of Ambassador Callista Gingrich and her staff, all her staff, for their tireless efforts to meet and solve all the problems, technical problems, bureaucratic problems. I think that this cooperation showed once more, if there was a necessity, that only through solidarity we can face this enormous problems enormous like this pandemic. So I thank you so much, and I think that this is now the time to open the question and answer session, but before addressing this, because answering the question, I would say a few things in Italian for those who are listening in Italian. Ringrazio tutti per la vostra partecipazione a questo webinar. Oggi stiamo parlando di un importante progetto che vede uniti nello sforzo di contrastare la pandemia la comunità di Sant'Egidio, l'Unione Internazionale delle Superiori Generali, con l'importante aiuto di USAID, l'Agenzia di Cooperazione allo Sviluppo del governo americano, degli Stati Uniti d'America. È un progetto importante che tocca 15 regioni in 25 città, che vede come protagonisti gli ultimi della società, quindi anziani, senza tetto, tutti quelli che hanno ordinariamente bisogno di assistenza, ma anche tutte quelle famiglie che normalmente non avrebbero bisogno, ma che la pandemia ha costretto, ha messo seriamente in difficoltà. È un popolo grande quello che bussa alla nostra porta, è un popolo fatto di tante categorie, c'era e c'è ancora bisogno di raddoppiare gli sforzi, e questo è stato anche possibile grazie all'aiuto e alla generosità di USAID. Sant'Egidio e l'Unione Internazionale delle Superiori Generali hanno unito i loro sforzi per far fronte a questa necessità. I numeri sono impressionanti e saranno comunque diffusi in un comunicato a seguito di questo webinar, di questa press conference. Noi siamo quindi particolarmente grati di poter annunciare un qualcosa che è già cominciato. Il progetto non comincia oggi, è già cominciato da qualche mese, e vediamo già i numeri impressionanti di migliaia di persone che vengono assistite attraverso cene, distribuzioni di cibo, di kit sanitari, assistenza e teleassistenza, teleconsulting medico, e anche ovviamente con le strutture tradizionali di Sant'Egidio, le mense e questo, insomma. Quindi questo era un breve riassunto di quanto detto fino ad ora, e ora possiamo forse aprire la questione di question and answer. Sister Pat e anch'io siamo pronti a rispondere alle vostre domande, se ce ne sono.
Delia Gallagher from CNN. How many volunteers, workers are involved? Rough number of how many people helped? Also, how many nuns in the 42 communities are involved? And if the project is running in 15 cities, any statistic is helpful. First question from Delia Gallagher, CNN.
Thank you, Delia from CNN. My part of the answer is that we are reaching, in the few weeks we started, more than 10,000 assisted. The volunteers, I don't have an exact number of the volunteers. It's a group that is going up and down, but there are hundreds of them. Of course, in some cities there are more. You have seen some of them in the video, but hundreds in every city. The cities, by the way, are 25. 15 of the region out of 20 in Italy. So we cover almost the entire nation with this project. Sister Pat, to you the floor for the other part of the answer.
My answer for the 42 communities, that has involved 1,175 sisters, and over 100 vulnerable women and children have been helped through shelters or through mobile assistance.
Thank you. By the way, the statistics will be released in the press release after. Okay. If there are no more questions, I would like to thank you all for your patience, for your attention. I I am very happy that we could host this meeting. My thanks to my co-panelists, Sister Pat and Ambassador Gingrich. And we will give you more update in the forthcoming months about the results of our project. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you very much, Mauro.